right. Okay, thanks. There we are.
Good job, Linda. But hey, go ahead and mute yours.
It is on mute.
No, it's not. Okay, so you,
I think you might only be able to. Why would that be?
It says to turn it on.
you know what? Shut yours off because I can hear you on mine. So when we're talking, the other board members will be able to hear you. Let's go ahead and log out.
Or I can do it on the phone.
No. I'll turn this
Okay.
so everybody can see kind of as a group. It's not a big
Get
deal.
on here and do the agenda. I do.
No, but just get out of the meeting.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
I know. Who gave us the agenda?
Hey, there's Rob. And if you could do it from your phone, maybe that would work too.
Where do I find
You got to go to the share drive.
I gotta go to the drive.
Mhm. We'll get started in a minute, gang. She's supposed to be. I don't know where she went. All right, we'll see if you can go in. We got a lot of feedback from Linda's computer.
Oh, I have
Hey,
it.
Joe, is it possible if you could send me another copy of the agenda, or maybe Joy? I know it came through today, but I don't know where the heck it is.
Joy, did you hear that?
Yes, I'll do it right now.
I know I
Okay.
saw it. I just don't have it in front of me. I apologize, but
Nope, that's okay. We're fine. Stacy had a doctor's appointment
Oh.
this afternoon, basically the dermatologist. So I was, Joy, did she tell you she wasn't going to make it back?
Joe, she's in the meeting.
Oh,
You'll hear.
Is she?
Go down to the bottom
She's
right
here.
corner and go to the three dots and go to change layout and choose tile. That way you can see everybody. It's a much better layout.
And even though you're muted, you still hear it. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We learned that early. You can't have more than one knot. Or I don't believe. Let's not change.
Here comes your agenda, Derek.
thank you, Joy. You're a lifesaver.
You're welcome.
Well, I think we can start. Yep.
all right. Let's, what we, that's the board meeting agenda.
Make
June 27th at 5 p.m. Call to order, Joy.
Did she ask for roll call?
Yes.
Tim Barrett,
Here.
Linda Duncan,
Here.
Jeremy Lees,
Here.
Rob Metzger,
Here.
Tara Owen. She's here.
Sorry, I always have issues with my volume. I didn't hear any of that. It
Well,
goes
we
on
just
and
heard,
on too much.
we just heard you, so that's good.
All right, so we're good. Everybody here?
It was just call to order, Tara.
Okay, sorry.
Hey, do you have the captions on at the bottom of your screen? Because
Yeah.
if you do, you can at least follow, if you don't hear, you can see what was said.
Yeah, I'm okay now. It just like right away at first for some reason it takes a while, so I'm good now, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, we're gonna go on to, well, what we have, action items. A,
Stacy, do you want to go over these resolutions one at a time and give any information that you think will be pertinent?
Hey, good afternoon. I can't, now I lost all the sound. I'm coming over to your computer, Joy. You want to back up?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm on, but my computer has lost all of its sound and I can't even hear you now. So I'm in worse shape than Tara. Okay, so these are just resolutions that have to do with the revenue bond sale. We'll be selling revenue bonds in the near future, and we should actually have money in the bank on June 11th, which is good timing because that will be right after our board meeting for any bills that we have to pay. So basically, you just need to go through each resolution, and I don't have the paperwork in front of me, but some of them I'm sure have to be roll call votes without looking.
All of them are.
So all of them without looking, and I'm not in front of my computer now. I had everything pulled up, but now I'm not there. So
That's all.
Um, it all has to do with our $2.1 million in revenue bond sales that's happening here in the near future to finalize all of that. So that's it in a nutshell.
Does anyone have any specific questions for Stacy? This is just basically dotting our i's and crossing our t's. If not, we need a motion for each resolution and a second, and then we'll have a roll call vote. And you can say, for example, letter A, instead of reading the entire thing, just say I moved to approve letter A as stated.
I approve to approve letter A as stated.
Second.
Okay, Tim Barrett,
Yes.
She just needs to do the.
Linda Duncan,
Yes.
Jeremy Lees,
Yes.
Rob Metzger,
Yes.
and Tara Owen.
Yes.
right, motion carried.
Yep.
B,
Yep, and you see letter B there. Yeah, very good. It's a form text.
Yeah, I'll make a motion for action item B.
Second.
Okay, Tim Barrett,
Yes.
Linda Duncan,
Yes.
Jeremy Lees,
Yes.
Rob Metzger,
Yes.
and Tara Owen.
Yes.
carries. C,
I don't have anything to add for letter C unless Stacy does.
No, I do not. Pretty much self-explanatory.
I'll make a motion for action item C.
Second.
Okay, Tim Barrett,
Yes.
Linda Duncan,
Yes.
Jeremy Lees,
Yes.
Rob Metzger,
Yes.
and Tara Owen.
Yes.
all right, motion carried. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Can we not see Linda?
Sorry.
Linda is listening. She did not join in because we had a lot of feedback from her computer.
Okay.
So she's here.
Okay. She's hard to hear.
I know it's because she's across the room.
Okay.
Okay, now we're to the work session agenda. I asked Mr. Meyer to join in tonight. One of the hot topics for us right now is the Return to Learn plan. And I had him email that to the board. I thought you might find it interesting just to glance through it. It's a 40-page document. And to make a long story short, what the state has tasked us to do by July 1st is to look at 3 scenarios. One scenario, if we start school just like normal, and there is no, shutdown, we start school on August 26th, just like, again, like a normal school year. But a part of that plan is it addresses how do we, how do I say this, make up the ground or make up, content. How do we fit in content that was missed? So that's one of the biggest pieces of that part of the plan, I call regular return time. The other end of the spectrum is, again, there's 3 pieces. Return is just normal. Return is if we're completely shut down. What would that look like in terms of getting information to the students and whatnot? The third option is somewhere in the middle, some type of hybrid of, being completely shut down or not. For example, what if the governor were to say that we can be at 50% capacity, just like she just announced, this week for outdoor events, a lot of different places, not just outdoor events, but anything on an indoor type situation. Let's say we can only be at 50% capacity. What would that look like for us? And so the phrase I've used, and I know Mr. Meyer will maybe mention this too, is we're taking a macro view of each of these plans and just building frameworks that are, again, very macro based, but not dialed in on the details to the core, because I don't believe we're going to know specifically what we are going to need to do until we get a little bit closer to that time. We get to August 1st, then we can get on the micro and say, hey, we're going to be at the first option, we're going to be at the second option or the third option. And then that 3 weeks before school, really hammer that out. From my perspective, the most difficult one by far is the hybrid. Because the hybrid just creates a lot of potential issues, and I feel for parents, because let's say they say that you can only have 50% of the students in school. Does that mean kids go every other day? And what if you have a 3rd grader and a 6th grader, and your 3rd grader is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and your 6th grader is Tuesday, Thursday, and then the second week it flips? How do you handle childcare for that? And trying to get our people back to work. That's interesting, or I think just tough. What Norway's done, they're one of the few countries that didn't go into a lockdown situation this spring. And what they did is all their elementary kids went to school full time, but their high school students learned online, remotely. So is that an option as a hybrid? We have not been given a ton of information from the state on specifically what could a hybrid look like. They're just saying, well, what a hybrid plan be? And the other thing too that's difficult for us, which is again why we're taking a macro approach right now, is if we have a hybrid situation, how long will that be? Will the governor say, hey, you need to have a hybrid situation until September 15th, and then you go back to, is she going to continue to scale up what the percentage is? That would definitely make a difference in how we would plan a hybrid if we knew it for 4 weeks versus a semester. A long-term hybrid approach versus, a short-term approach. So that's what I see from my perspective. And we talk about this administratively. And while we've got the teachers here, still under contract. The teaching staffs are coming in Friday and Monday this week and next week. And one of the tasks that they're doing is they're looking at this plan and what their roles would be and also giving input, try to get their perspective as well. And again, kind of have a framework in place going into the summer, but that's due to the state by the 1st of July. And the governor has assured us there will be flexibility within that. You know, let's say we have some information about what we think, you know, a regular learning would look like coming back. We've got flexibility. They said we'll have flexibility within that to make changes. They just want us to have a plan, and I respect that, and of course we're going to have a plan. The good news for us is a lot of the planning pieces we've already had in place because our technology is good. You know, a lot of districts, they didn't have a lot of the things that we had going into this spring, and so they've got a lot of ramping up to do this summer. So we're very fortunate to have been prepared in that regard. Because again, the governor said this spring, and I joke, but it's true. Everything is like you got 3 options. It's the Goldilocks plan. You got the soft, medium, and then hard. You know, this spring, the governor said she basically waived everything. You didn't have to do anything with the kids, which isn't a good plan, but that's what she said. She also said you could be fully required, or she said you could be somewhere in the middle. And that's what this return to learn plan is as well. The only difference is they took away the you can't do nothing plan, okay? Which I agree, there shouldn't be that as an option for kids. So for us, what we did this spring was really kind of a hybrid already. We already kind of had that in place where our 7-12 kids already kind of ran a schedule 2 days a week. Okay, and again, it's a little easier to do a hybrid for a 7-12 than it is a K-6. And the other questions we had, I feel like I'm going on here, but this is really what we hammer out every day, is would the governor, if we're forced to go to a hybrid plan, still require the amount of seat time that kids have? You know, we got the 1,080 hours right now in a calendar year by seat time. Would she waive that and say you have to cover particular content, or would she say that, you know what, if you're, let's say, doing your online learning, they have to have so many logged hours of teaching content on here, or is that changed because it is strictly over a computer? I don't know, but those are the variables that are up in the air, and that's why we're taking the macro approach, because as we get closer, I think they'll give us more specific guidance. Mr. Go ahead. Well, I even threw this out the other day, and I don't know if I said this to the Wilton team or the Durant team, but I said, what if the governor were to make a statement, and she could, and it wouldn't be out of line to say, you know what, we think we're close on August 1st. I'm shutting down schools until September 15th, and we're going to open up as normal. And I'm going to say that every school needs to go through June 15th. She could do something like that if the numbers are getting closer. But then again, that's a definite possibility. So there's a variety of things that could happen. And maybe she would do that. I don't know. I'd rather have us start school September 15th and be normal than start school August 26th and be on a hybrid for 3 weeks. I mean, that's my opinion. But Mr. Meyer, I hope I didn't take a lot of your fire, but you want to talk a little about some of the things that you're doing as far as being our point guard in this effort with the Return to Learn plan?
Yeah, I think you read my notes for the meeting. No, I sent out earlier today to the school board 2 documents. One of them is 40 pages. It's the document that they've sent out. That's the supporting document for the plan that we'll have to implement through the CASA system. The one that I would encourage the school board to look at would be that Cliff Notes version. I'll try to hold it up here. It's just a 1-pager. This is going to be kind of our game plan I feel like on our end, administratively here, with teachers here in the district, with Joe Raggets, with Heather Hartley, with our guidance staff, and all the subcomponents that go into this type of planning here. As Mr. Burnett mentioned, it's all due July 1st, and I feel like we're shooting in the dark just a little bit. You know, we've almost got 2 months from July 1st to school starting, and look what's happened in just 2 months from today. I mean, that literally was almost March 12th when we were basically in shutdown after that, or when we went into closure. So as Mr. Burnett said, there are 3 options the state's giving us. One is coming back to on-site. So that's coming back to your building, and that's that whole idea of everything returns to normal. Well, we know things aren't going to be normal if we all come back here. If we shove 850 students in this building, we're already in violation of social distancing guidelines with that 6 foot, you know, the spacing between kids. You know, there's a lot of things to think about, and I'll talk about that in a little bit here. The second one, which is probably very much more likely next year if we would go through closure, is this whole idea of continuous learning online. The state has drawn a line in the sand. It has to be required now. Optional is no longer a viable option for anybody. I believe I read that the state, there were less than 10 schools that took the required option this last year. Most everybody else was optional. And I kind of had the feeling that the state was using this as a test period a little bit to kind of feel out what kind of plans would look like, for people to kind of feel out what would technology look like. And as Mr. Burnett said, I think we did a pretty good job with that. You know, we learned a lot of things up front right away about Google Meet and how we can meet kids and get kids online to learn. The elementary plan, very different compared to the high school. If you think about a kindergarten kid trying to manage a computer, trying to click on Google Meet, look at us as adults struggle with this and making sure our volume is correct and on and people can hear us and see us and do things like that, compared to a 10th or a 12th grader that technology is, you know, pretty much ubiquitous with who they are. And then the one that I think that'd be harder would be the hybrid one. And I have here in my notes, if you just want to think about it, imagine a class of 20 kids, 10 of them are here, 10 of them are at home. How do we support learning for both of them? You know, does the classroom teacher record their lesson for the day, and then those kids at home are watching that? Are they watching via live stream? Or are they recorded lessons that are maybe a day late? You know, are kids here every other day? Are the kids here for an entire week? Next week they're gone, and then the new batch comes back. I really feel like the hybrid option probably has the most question marks to it, the most detail to it. That'll probably throw the biggest roadblocks for us here at school, and quite honestly. The good news is the teachers are coming back this Friday, and they'll be back on Monday. We'll spend most of the day on Friday getting input about what happened from March 12th till the end of this school year. What worked well for kids, what worked well for staff, you know, the online that worked with the high school. I know we had some kids that got packets of materials to finish classes. We also want to know what didn't work well. You know, what were the things that the teachers felt like kids struggled with? Was there connectivity issues? You know, do we have kids that internet access is not a viable option where they live? We did get hotspots to kids. But that's a huge thing when you think about 850 kids, making sure they're all on the internet and then all at the right times and that everything works seamlessly. And all of us in education and you and your roles, technology isn't always perfect. So there are some things with that that we'll have to go through. I do think that will help better situate us though as we look forward to that required learning piece that we have next year. So as Mr. Burnett talked about that whole macro level, that big picture thinking, and we want them to think about those 3 scenarios. You know, we're here back in the building, you know, there's that continuous online learning where it's required, and then the hybrid approach. And we want the teachers to be thinking about, really the big ones are that health and safety. You know, how do we space kids in classrooms? I know my wife teaches kindergarten and they go to the bathroom all at the same time. So she can kind of corral the kids. They all go in together. We can't do that. Going to a drinking fountain as a group, you know, going down to eat lunch. High school kids going to their lockers. How does a teacher travel from classroom? They're going to PE class or they're going to music, or is recess an option or not an option? How do we get outside? We need the teachers to think through that just a little bit, because they're going to see that a little bit different than administrators will from that level. We also need to make sure that we're identifying resources. You know, We're a Chrome-based school. We use Google Docs. We have online resources, and we can share those things. That works very well for us here, 7-12. And I would say that probably works very well for us here, probably going all the way down to 3rd grade. I think the students in 3rd grade start getting some introductions to Google Docs, how to use Google Meet, and things along those lines. It's the kids that below that we really have to think maybe a little bit different with, because it really requires almost a second person to be at home to kind of help them manage that computer just a little bit. So I know Mrs. Austin, she might talk about this later, and Mr. Snavely might as well. The elementary looks a little bit different because not only are the 1st grade teachers thinking about content that their kids missed at the end of the year, and they need to share that with 2nd grade teachers, those 1st grade teachers also need to hear about that from the kindergarten teachers. They need to know what kind of content was missed. So there's probably a little bit more planning that has to go on at the elementary level, because you're either going up a grade level or down a grade level with that content and that information. And it's not so much that we use that as a way to say, hey, we got to put all this remediation in play. It's how can we keep moving kids forward? You know, our starting point might have to be a little bit different next year for a lot of our kids. But it's that idea of moving things forward. The 7-12 level, it looks a little bit different. We want to get our content teachers together. We want all the science teachers to be able to have that time to say, hey, I didn't get to this theory or to this content, or the Algebra 2 or Algebra 1 teacher to say, hey, we didn't quite hit this well enough at the end of the year. So the Algebra 2 teacher knows that going into the year. So it looks a little bit different. We've got some formats we want them to fill out as far as these questions. And this is going to get back to our BLTs in both buildings. And that's where we'll probably start our first look at some of that micro look at what's going to happen in the buildings. Because as we get all of this information from the staff, kind of that pie in the sky look of things, and we start weeding things down, our BLTs are going to really help with that, I think. But we also have to make sure we're getting the appropriate guidance out of the CDC, you know, the Iowa Department of Public Health, and Muscatine Public Health as well. And that'll better situate us, you know, for the fall. There are really 7 areas that we kind of have to be thinking about when we do our planning. And those areas are leadership. So how is the district leadership, Mr. Burnett, Mr. Snavely, Mrs. Austin, how are we communicating with families? Who's doing that communication? I will be involved with that. The infrastructure is all of that, you know, the technology, or how are we getting things out to kids? Health and safety is obviously a big one. You know, do we allow people to wear PPEs in the building? Do we require staff to do it? Do we not require staff to do that? The Iowa academic standards, I kind of think they speak for themselves, because that's kind of the whole idea of Iowa Core and what kids are learning. Social emotional learning and health, you know, how that whole mental health area was a big, I don't want to say it's a buzzword. I mean, I think it's a very real aspect of what kids and families deal with anymore. And I'm pretty sure that this has probably just augmented that a little bit more for kids. And then all the data considerations that go with what kind of information do we need when we get back. So that's kind of a really high overview, pie in the sky kind of look at that. I haven't seen what the application looks like yet. They keep saying that's going to come out in mid-June. You know, that's still a half a month away, and still a lot of things can change by that time. But that's kind of where we're at. Administratively, we meet every Tuesday, and we can kind of continue to go through guidance. The DE has webinars that they host typically on Tuesdays and Thursdays that kind of go through this. So I think the DE is doing a nice job actually leading us through very muddy times, in quite honesty. So I will stop talking, and if you've got any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
Mr. Snavely or Mrs. Austin, is there anything you want to add from your perspective?
Real quick, Mr. Meyer.
Yep.
What is a BLT? Sorry, I'm new.
Sorry. Education. That's our building leadership team. My bad. Sorry, Tim. Okay. Those are the leaders in the building. The elementary has one staff person, like per grade level. So there's a kindergarten teacher, a first grade teacher, a second grade teacher, third grade. The junior senior high building looks at it more like content. So there's a science person that's on there. There's a math person that's on there. There's a CTE person on there. So that's kind of where Mr. Snavely maybe runs some of, you know, these, here's what we're thinking, kind of ideas through them to kind of get their feedback before we take that whole staff. Sorry about that. My bad. I get stuck talking like that sometimes, and it's just a bad habit.
No problem. Thank you.
Yep.
Can everybody hear me? The only thing I would add to what Mr. Meyer and Mr. Burnett kind of opened with was, at least at the secondary level, we're really going to have to get a plan in place that moves from that voluntary into required learning. And like Mr. Burnett said, I don't know if that's going online 5 days a week, or if we could get by with 4 days a week, or if we would have to start at 8:15 in the morning and go all day, or if we could get by with going, from a 10 o'clock to 3:15. There's a lot of things to consider, because students, putting them online for that long of a time is going to be tough to keep them engaged. But the challenge for us is going to be moving from voluntary to required and getting all students engaged in that, and what supports are going to be in place if students don't get online, because we're not going to be able to do a pass-fail model like we're doing right now. It's going to be graded, and we're going to have to really work to build those relationships with families to get them online and support them, and be able to have equity in place where we meet the needs of all students, whether they have 504 plans or IEPs or social emotional support or whatever it is. But it's really just, how can we beef that up? We have a great structure in place, but how can we beef that up to move to more of a required learning? So that would be the only thing I'd add. That's something that I think about a lot, is what can we do differently to move up to that next level. I did meet with the Mid-Prairie principal last Friday. They are doing required learning, and they don't even have set hours for their teachers like we do. And that was the one takeaway. He said when he does this next year, if he has to do it, he said he would move his building to have set hours, which we've already had. And then we're also meeting with Comanche on Friday at 1 o'clock. They supposedly have knocked the required learning out of the park and done a really good job with it. So we want to meet with them on Friday and just kind of learn what some of their pitfalls were, so we don't make some of the same mistakes. So that's where we're kind of at now, is how can we learn from others that are doing required, so we don't make those mistakes, and so we get off on the right foot with our students and families in the fall. That's really all I have to add.
I guess, are there any specific questions for Mr. Meyer or the administrative team on Return to Learn? Mrs. Austin and Mr. Snavely are going to talk about some other things with, end of the year and whatnot, but is there anything specifically on Return to Learn that you can think of? Okay. Well, Mrs. Austin, do you want to go to your part of what you've got?
Okay, I think the first thing that will be important for you guys to at least know, and is very interesting to me, is our survey that we did. It was due today, so what I sent you, or Mr. Burnett sent you through the email, was as of about 3 o'clock today. So I think within a couple people, it should be pretty much final. And our teachers are going to use a lot of this information, because sometimes what we think is happening isn't exactly what's happening. And it was very eye-opening, and the comments is where I had hoped to get some improvement ideas, because we approached this a little differently, I think, than the junior and senior high did, because of our age of kids. The biggest thing, we decided at the beginning that it was going to all be about taking care of our people first, and then giving everybody grace. And as you know, I'm out with the teachers constantly, which was a bonus of this. There's been a lot of good things come out. And one of the things, and I wrote this in our wrap up for the teachers, I think I know more about the teachers and what they do and what they think than I ever have before. Because usually my job is a lot of supervising, a lot of discipline, a lot of on the edge stuff. It's not the day-to-day how they think. And that's what we got this time. And so when I charged them from the beginning to just take care of people and give everybody grace, actually both my documents kind of worked in tandem. That what teachers learned during this time to always remember, if you ever want a little bit of an uplifting 3 minutes, glance through that because it's incredible. And these are I think, big lessons that they want to keep with them as we transition back into whatever kind of learning it is. And I think for an elementary teacher, especially, or maybe any teacher, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say that. I feel like this whole document is about good teaching. And it's what we've talked about and talked about and talked about, but they lived it this time. And they had to live it this time, the way we managed it at the elementary. So I'm very, very proud of them for that. And I think my key will be to keep putting that in front of them. Because as we get back into the rat race, they need to keep the priority. I mean, we had several teachers say, I don't know why we do so much stuff. Why do we teach so much stuff? You know, and that's what we've tried to get teachers to look at a lot. What sticks with kids? What's the most important thing? And for good or bad, this situation taught us that on the fly. That was very much reflected in our survey. We were pretty much 90s. I mean, we had one grade level that was 100% across the board with that first question. Do you feel school personnel were able to support you and your child during the COVID pandemic? And, you know, I do think the school took that community, that charge, and our teachers really did a great job with that. The resources question, I think, is also a tribute to the whole school district for being able to get people those resources. And then online groups, that was very different than we thought it was going to be. And as everyone has spoken already, it's going to be really interesting to get the teachers back together and share up and down, because I do have a little bit of a competitive group, and they were always asking me what the other groups were doing. So now Friday, when we get them all together, they're going to share up and down, and that whole rising tide rises boats, or whatever that is. We're living that big in the elementary right now. Did you feel connected to school? That was a little bit more all over the board. So, and a lot of the comments back these numbers up. So it'll be interesting for the teachers to kind of pick that apart. Communication was all over the board, and that's the last one, which was our lowest one. For being the lowest one, I need to shield that or take that a little bit. The communication did not come directly from me on most things. I worked through the teachers, and that's why we had to meet all the time. And there were there were probably 3 comments that requested, they wished that it was same across the board. Their 2nd grader had different things than their 5th grader, different times, whereas at 7-12, they all did the Tuesday, Thursday thing. We were all over the board. And again, and we changed things as it went from a 2-week deal to the rest of to a couple month deal, to the whole, it just kept getting bigger. And I really used this opportunity and led the teachers, or I thought I did anyway, through that idea of giving them a lot of latitude, because we know that this could be ahead now. I mean, you figured that out early. And I wanted them to, instead of us telling them what to do, for them to experiment. And that's why it was all over the board, and of course, like Mr. Meyer, I think, said, a kindergartner and a 6th grader are very different. And the lessons learned, and I think what we were able to get our teachers to do on the fly, and what they were willing to do on the fly, will serve us very well. When you think about moving from voluntary to required in the elementary, I don't think we're going to have that problem because our engagement was so high. I think the problem we're going to have is if teachers are here teaching all day, those kids that are home learning, it will be hard for teachers at night not to have to help those kids too. And that will cause, I think, a lot of stress on teachers' part. So we'll have to set, that's what I'm worried about a little bit, setting parameters, because our teachers were so available and so helpful during this time. But that lowest communication piece is definitely mine, and expectations, because we changed that. Like I said, as it went from 2 weeks to 2 months, we changed what we had going. And multiple responses are, they wish we would have told everybody it had to be required, because their older kids didn't really want to do it, but the younger kids were really beating it to get it done. So we'll take care of all of that stuff this time. And I think the communication will be able to be a little bit more building specific. But I think because we did allow the teachers to do their own thing, they were able to grow a lot. And you find, as you do in all surveys, some people want more emails, some people want less emails. Some people overwhelmed them, some people wanted more work for their child. And that's okay. That was good. But I really think the survey comments will help our teachers see where we can continue to grow. Other than that, summer school, we've had a tremendous response to summer school. Everybody's saying yes to summer school. So we've got math and reading and a social emotional component already planned in. And we got a lot. So we're going to work on Monday, training the teachers and giving them all the tools to be ready to go for that. Latchkey's ready to go. 35 families starting on Friday, unless that has changed. And Anne's got, she's working closely again with the CDC and lots of things. I think that I'm excited to see kind of that soft start and see how that works with some of the, because a lot of those things they're going to be required to do will be the same things we'll be required to do if we're here in the fall. Aligned Impact of Muscatine County donated a bunch of hand sanitizer to us because when we were planning to start Latchkey, we weren't sure if they were going to be able to get all the sanitation materials needed. So that was very good. And then I also want to give a shout out to Brenda and Lynn Ochiltree from Candy Kitchen Lorland Candles. They donated a gift card to every teacher and I think it was every teacher, employee in the district. And that, again, our community has just appreciated all of the work the teachers have done, as you have. And I think that positive, that just keeps everything positive and them wanting to continue to work equal and help kids. So any questions for me from the elementary end?
Do we get to see comments?
Sure. I will send them to you. Yeah. Yeah.
The last two questions, right?
Yep. They are the last two questions. Yep. I will copy them and send them to you. They'll be by grade level because that's how I had them do it. I compiled this from all of them, but I sent the surveys out per grade level.
And obviously these are the responses, pre-K, 19 out of 61.
Correct. Number of responses versus number of kids in the class. Yep. And I feel anytime I get and those are all close to 50%, that's pretty good feedback. I think we can make decisions based on that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody else have any questions for Mrs. Austin? If not, please.
Okay, well, I have several things here. I did not do a survey with staff just because ours looked a little bit, or with the community. Ours learning just looked a lot different, and it's going to look totally different if we would have to go to more of an online required learning in the fall. So our teachers kind of deciphering through those questions on Friday and Monday will be helpful to us. I just felt like we were sending out a lot of information to parents on how to pick up locker stuff and how to get Chromebooks back and how we're going to do different things with seniors and things like that. I just have not done a survey with the people involved with that. So several things that I do want to highlight. Baseball and softball. You probably heard that as of June 1st, the governor did open that up with restrictions. So we're planning behind the scenes right now for that. And then June 15th would be the first playing date. So I think we have like 7 or 8 dates that we would have at home and then several bus trips. So that guidance is slowly coming into us and we're looking at that. I know tomorrow the associations are going to release guidance on how to travel, like how we're going to bus our kids and what parameters have to be in place and things like that. So that's really a work in progress right now, but we are planning to play baseball and softball this summer, at least at some capacity. I know I talked to Ryan today, and a lot of the lower level, at least softball, schools have said we're not playing anything under varsity. So we're having a really hard time getting some of those games. And of course, junior high is not allowed. So that's off the table for softball. And so we'll just kind of work through that as we go with all the precautions in place with that. So just wanted to start with that. And there's lots of activities that the DE is allowing and a lot that they are not allowing. So it's very much like the city and like different things out in the city that are opening up and things like that. So basically baseball, softball's opened up. as of June 1st, but we can't have any open gyms. We cannot have anybody in our weight room training, those kinds of things. We can have our Eduity credit recovery courses this summer. I know Mrs. Dawson's starting summer school, those kinds of things. But there's certain things that we can do, certain things that we cannot do. So the one thing I do want to highlight is prom. We've talked a lot about prom, and the DE has been very clear that prom is not allowed, at least right now. So for the month of June anyway, unless they release guidance at the end of the month, prom is just on hold right now. And I know a lot of schools have set a date for later July, and we opted not to put a date out there. My fear was if we put a date like late June or early July or whatever, people are going to automatically think that prom's on and we're going to have it. And then they go forward with buying dresses and renting tuxes, putting all these plans in place. And then all of a sudden we have to shatter those dreams by canceling. So we have not put a date out there. If the 6-foot social distancing, if those guidelines stay in place, we will not be able to have prom. It's just that simple. It's unfortunate, but I think every school is either canceled prom or is in kind of a holding pattern like we are. So anyway, if you have people ask you about that, that's where we're at with that. We hope we can have this thing before July 12th, but we'll just have to wait and see on that. Graduation. Okay, so graduation's tough because the Department of Education does not regulate graduation. They don't even view it as a required activity. So when we're on a webinar with the Department of Ed and we start asking questions about graduation, that's what they tell us. They tell us that that's not governed by the Department of Ed, and they tell us to reach out to our local Department of Public Health and the CDC. And as you know, the Department of Public Health works closely with the CDC. And basically they tell us to plan graduation based on their recommendations. And that's why in the news, you're seeing all these different things, from one student and their family crossing the stage at a time, to a drive-in, to a parade type situation, to all kinds of things, to postponing it to July like we did, hoping for a formal ceremony. So that's why you're seeing all those different things, is because the guidance is different. So on Tuesday of this week, I reached out to Christy Roby Williams at the Muscatine Department of Public Health and just told her that we're looking at a July 12th date, and asked for her advice on that. And on that phone call, she told me that I should plan for an outdoor venue. So I know Mr. Burnett and I have talked a lot about that. And at this point, should not plan to be inside. And so we've explored. What I'm going to say tonight is every option's on the table right now, and we're kind of in a holding pattern. Obviously it's going to be best to have it inside, but we're going to have to make a decision if we have it inside, what that guest list might look like. That's the formal ceremony that I think everybody wants. Okay, but I'm being advised by public health that that's not a good decision right now. So again, we have until July 12th, so we certainly have some time to figure this out. But in the meantime, we are exploring the possibility of having it out on the football field. There's certainly advantages to that, but there's certainly disadvantages to that when you talk about technology and different things like that. So, and then you bring in the rain factor and those kinds of things. So the other challenge is we have not done a rehearsal yet. So that's going to be planned for that morning of July 12th. So at this point, we're just kind of exploring all of our options. I'm losing a little bit of sleep every night trying to figure it all out. But it's not going to become clear to us until the date gets closer. So I just wanted to touch base on that a little bit and talk about kind of what our train of thought is for that. And basically, it's nothing that we really need to worry about right now, because in a week, things could totally change. And in a month, things could certainly be different. So again, it's our job just to make sure we have all options explored and carry them out once the date gets closer, and communicate them out as far as what we're going to do and who's going to be allowed and those kinds of things. So I just wanted to touch base on graduation a little bit and where we're at with that, as far as numbers that may be able to attend and where the venue might be. The other thing I want to talk about is the car cruise. If you follow Wilton Junior Senior High on social media, you saw a flyer go out over the weekend. So basically, I received a call on Friday afternoon asking if the seniors could have a car cruise. So this was leading into Memorial Day weekend. And so I told them that I would support them with this. And Taylor Garvin really took the lead on this. And she basically told me that she would organize it all. The school really wouldn't have to do a whole lot with this. And that's what they did. She's a tremendous leader, and she stepped up and organized it. I did tell her that she needed to get a hold of the city council right away on Friday afternoon, which she did, or at least Chief Dave Clark. So they pulled that together, and then I told her that I would put that out on our social media site to kind of, let the community know about that. So you probably saw that flyer. That is going to be Sunday at 2 p.m. That's this Sunday at 2 p.m. and they're going to follow the Founders Day route, and they'll have a lot of fun with that. You probably noticed a lot of parades that schools are doing, and I certainly, when I received that call, I certainly didn't want to shut that down. I wanted to give them that opportunity to kind of do that. And they took the lead on it and did a good job, and that'll be fun for them on Sunday. So with that being said, the last thing I want to talk about is we're doing our student pickup right now and drop off. So on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of this week, actually, they're still down there tonight. We ran till 6 o'clock tonight for families that are working. Basically, we had our families sign up for either a morning or afternoon of one of those 3 days to drop off their Chromebook and any textbooks or anything they may have that the school owns, and then in turn to pick up their locker components and all that. So again, I have to give a shout out to Bo Huber, Jill Proctor, Joe Hewitt, Nicole Hewitt, and Pete Dutchaver. They helped with the seniors, and they're certainly helping with all the others. And it's hot down there. We're running it out of the back of the weight room, and we have a process, and we sent out a map to parents to keep the traffic going in one direction. But it's hot down there. They're doing a great job. We had to move it to the back of the school because of rain and the potential of storms. We certainly didn't want our people out in a pop-up tent in the midst of a storm. So they're doing a great job with that, and I can't thank them enough. We also have a couple paras, Kelly Jannings and Sharon Lincoln, that have been kind of our runners between the weight room and gym, getting locker components. So again, I can't thank them enough for their help this week with that. And then basically, I think between Mr. Burnett and Mr. Meyer, they kind of hit on our plans for Friday and Monday with getting teachers checked out and then really collecting some information from them on the return to learn plan. So after they're gone next week, we can really buckle down and start writing that plan and things along those lines. So that's really what I have for you tonight. I'll entertain any questions you might have. We can take one day at a time right now and do the best we can and take things as they come. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Mark, I just wanted to take a minute to let you and everyone else know that when this all started from the very beginning, Mr. Dutchaver has taken upon himself to check in with both of my girls, knowing that they both work at the nursing home and have had kind of a bumpy road with residents. Sorry, I don't want to cry, with residents and whatnot there. And I did get a chance to see him last week when he came to see Carly, but just that we really, really appreciate it. And the girls definitely felt cared about. And I know it's easier with the little people and they get to see their teachers and then the older kids are kind of off to the side in their classrooms and whatnot, but it was just a really good connection and meant a lot to both of them. And he offered up FaceTime anytime, phone call, text, email, whatever it was that they needed to do to talk. And obviously teenagers don't talk to their mom about everything. So it was really nice for them to have that option.
Yeah, Tara, I'm glad you brought that up. I talked to him a lot throughout the week, and he's one of those people that I think needs the human interaction, and he thrives on that. And, he went to all the seniors that signed up that he could get to reach back out to him to take their picture for kind of the decision day. I think there's going to be a video coming out on that. We had planned to have a decision day with every single senior where they wore like their college gear, or if they're going to the military or workforce, really to recognize them in an all school assembly and to, just celebrate them. And and we weren't able to do that. So I know the last 2 weeks he's been out visiting seniors, specifically taking those pictures, and he's just had a blast with that. But I do appreciate that, Tara, because he's one of those that's really gone above and beyond. We have a lot of people that have gone above and beyond, but he's really taken it to the extreme to really connect with people on whatever they may need. And we need people like that during this time. And he's one of those. I appreciate that. And he was able to hold a goat. And I think that was a highlight.
Yeah,
So
he was pretty excited about that.
yeah, for sure. Any other questions for me?
Joe, you're on mute.
Shoot.
That was good, Bill.
Denise was excited. I was muted. I said, maybe we at the county fair, we need to start a celebrity goat show. And we could have, Pete be one of the people that participate. He would love that.
Yes, I think so.
How are you feeling, Tara? I mean, honestly, you're someone that, when I see, like, when I'm watching the news and they say so many cases in Iowa,
Mm-hmm.
I think of you as one of those people on there. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I honestly, obviously, like I said before, I wasn't near as sick as a lot of people, but there's lasting remnants still. A few weeks ago, we were out chasing cattle in the field, and I couldn't breathe. Like, I didn't realize how much my lungs hadn't healed yet. And just this last weekend, we were outside and just working and doing chores and stuff, and I had to stop and had to take a puff off the inhaler because it isn't quite right. And I don't realize it on, daily things, daily tasks, but when I exert myself or, have to run or whatever, I quickly realize the impact that it had. So again, like I said, very lucky that I wasn't near as sick as other people. Julie, I mean, gosh, nowhere near that, but still it was pretty powerful. So it's pretty crazy.
Did I hear this or am I dreaming this? Was Carly diagnosed as being asymptomatic?
She was. The only reason we knew was because both of my girls and the entire staff had to be tested at the nursing home. They just did a wide test, and they did the nose swab, and they also did the antibody test. And she left work at like 2 on, I think it was on a Sunday, and she had called me saying she was going to Kayla's house. And the next phone call I got, I couldn't understand anything she was saying. She was so upset. She's just crying. And I yelled at her and said, "You have to stop crying. You have to tell me what's wrong." And she said, "Mom, I tested positive and I have no symptoms. I could have given it to someone." I mean, she was so upset about it. And, has been, the whole time my girls have been pretty adamant about the social distancing and trying to, keep our circle small is what I say to people. And, but she didn't have one symptom. And then there were 4 other girls working there as well, and they had no symptoms at all. So, and it was weird because her boss called her. A few of the girls were going to kind of stay together at one house just to kind of stay away from everyone, and isolate that way. And her boss called her and said, don't go stay with them because your antibody test was really high. So she was already at the end of the process, and they thought that she would test negative soon. So what was weird about the whole thing is Roger had to take 2 weeks off of work, and Carly didn't because she already tested negative and she's gone back to work, but Roger had to stay that full 2 weeks off of work. And so she went back before he even got to. So she was very, very upset about it. It rocked her world quite a bit. Just, I think then, made it very real that you can have 0 symptoms and be carrying this around. And that kind of hit us hard too, because obvious with me, all the symptoms that I had, was very, very different. So Taylor tested negative, but for some reason, Heather Hartley had a tough time getting her blood and they couldn't do the antibody test, which I was really excited to see hers because I swear that her and Roger and Briggs all had it early February, all that junk. So I really, really wanted to see her antibody test, but we weren't able to see it. So
Interesting. Well, I'm glad you're doing better too. So yeah. Joy, is there anything you want to mention about your sister? We're sure Sure grateful that Julie's home. Is there anything you want to update the board on?
She's taking it day by day. She's it's going to be a long summer, but she could be on oxygen for another 6 to 12 weeks. So, but she's going to get there.
What blows my mind is just the power of plasma.
Yeah, amen. I call it the liquid gold.
Joy, the one thing I've said to people, how many hours did, once she got the transfusion to when she got off the ventilator, that was within 24 hours, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Thursday night to Saturday morning. The nurse called me at about 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, and I about fell to the floor when Julie actually talked to me. I mean, I couldn't believe it. So yeah, it was something else.
So to go from one extreme to getting off the ventilator and able to speak to you by getting that transfusion, that's
yes.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Well, good. Are there any questions that the board has for any one of us administratively in regards to, finishing up the school year? The only other thing I would add is our building project's on time and everything's going so far as planned. They're getting things, so we're tied into the city sewer. That's what they've been working on right now, and they were out there working today. So everything seems to be, talking to Joe Raggets today about it, everything's on par for where we need to be. And gosh, getting all the bonding stuff done. Thank you, Stacy, for your work with that, and just keep moving forward. Tomorrow was supposed to be the actual physical last day of school for the kids. So we'll see what happens. I sent to you what the governor proclaimed earlier what was that, yesterday? Where she opened up venues at 50% and that sort of thing. Even when Mr. Snavely talked to Christy Roby Williams, that was right before the governor made that announcement. So again, things literally change sometimes on a daily basis. So I think it'll be good this summer with the baseball and softball. And like Mrs. Austin talked about with Latchkey, it's a good soft opening for us to see how we can adapt and give us kind of some prep into going into next fall. So we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting. You think about social contact in that bubble. I don't know how you play football with a 6 foot, radius or, a lot of sports. So wrestling. Yeah, Iowa State's allowing half their fans right now, and who gets tickets? I know, but Mr. Diedrich's the high school principal, and Durand is a huge Nebraska fan, which he was there before I started. But Nebraska holds like a sellout streak, and their season, a lot of people have season tickets there, and I'm sure it's the same in Michigan or whatnot too. But how do you then determine which season ticket holders? Is it a hybrid where you get half the games and the other half the games? How big's your checkbook? I know. Yeah. So in a lot of areas, it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes down. So. Okay.
So trying to figure out what to do, and Tim's gonna test to, we kind of left it up to Stephanie, what she's comfortable with. We can only do lap swim, we can only do swimming lessons, and exercise goes under swim lessons. So we figured she can only have so many, they're gonna have to sign up. No locker rooms, no hot tub, the lap swimming, you have to sign up for people, you can have, we're allotted an hour, at 15 minutes of that has to be to sanitize after we come in. So we're gonna try to, and see how it goes, maybe exercise, we can do some more, it just depends on, like I said, it just depends. And we're leaving it up to Stephanie to check it out, do, when's the lessons are gonna start, and she's gonna get hold of the people and sign up so that we can get the pool at least somebody in there and doing a little bit of revenue, but it's crazy. Right, Tim? It's just craziness. So anyway, that's all I want to share.
Linda, I can't hear you.
They can't hear you very good, Linda, but they can see. Basically, Linda was just going over the parameters of,
For this,
you know, what's in place for lap swim and,
Yep.
you know, lessons or whatnot, Tim. And she just said that you both had a pool board meeting and just trying to get stuff in place on that. Is there anything you want to add from what, you know, the pool board?
just other than Stephanie is doing a great job. She has a great plan, and I think one thing people are going to have to just realize that they may not get what they want as far as amount of people or whatever she will allow in there. And people need to realize too that when kids are being dropped off for lessons, that the coach or the person will come out and grab the kids. The kids will go in and have it, and then the parents will need to stay in their cars or somewhere. They can't be in the lobby. So this is all things that we're going to have to just realize that this is the way it is right now. And I give Stephanie 100% support on this because I have a feeling she's going to need it. She's going to get some pushback, but she's doing a great job. And I think people will realize, you know, how important it is to do what we're doing.
I agree. Jeremy brought this up, and you'll see it on our agenda, so I don't forget it. He just asked a question about what we've done as a group as far as IASB's legislative priorities. You know, what we've talked about in the past. And out at the school board convention, there's what do they call it, Linda? Legislative day, the day before, like a caucus. Rob, have you attended that before? Linda?
I did one.
Christopher did that. Yes.
I always, since we have a representative, Bobby Kaufman, to try, it's just mainly to get our input for our representative out of the ISD to tell us what they want, set priorities. So I just always didn't do a lot because we have Bobby and we just tell him what we feel. And so to me, it was never a high priority, but I know a lot of people do, and that's fine. And if anybody ever wanted to go, they have that option.
Jeremy, I don't know how well you heard that, but basically what Linda said is we've had people that have attended in the past that at the, you know, at the school board convention, but we've been very blessed having a really good relationship with Representative Bobby Kaufman here and sharing that information out to him on what we feel our values, wants, needs, et cetera. And from my experience, and hopefully it's the same for everybody else, if you email him, he's usually really good at responding. But Jeremy just brought up a good point of, you know, about the legislative priorities piece. What's interesting with the Association of School Boards is they represent everybody from a school district like Bennett to the Des Moines School District. And so typically, from my experience, it's been a very generalized legislative priority with always more funding, more flexibility of certain things. And most of the time, if not all the time, it's been in line with what we would like to see here in Wilton too. We're not adding a twist specifically, but at the same time, if the board is interested in putting together a group of legislative priorities and sending that to the association, shoot, that's up to the board to do that. I'm certainly not against it by any stretch. I'm just giving you a little history there, Jeremy and Tim, of what the, you know, the priority list has been. Rob or Tara, do you want to add anything to that, or Linda? Is that my hitting it from what you've? And Jeremy, does that answer your question at all?
Yeah, I guess the reason why I brought it up was mostly to do with just, I assume that the ISB is kind of like lobbyists, so that you have a lobby inside of the government. So, which I deal with lobbyists from the poultry side to the ag side to the fish and game side, all the different things. And so it's always nice to have your word out there.
Absolutely.
And so that was kind of why I brought it up. I didn't know what we did, but like you said, if you actually have a good contact and actually a good relationship with your representative, then it's not as necessary because that's the guy you really need to talk to, not the lobbyist. So.
Exactly. I don't want to say we're spoiled, but I feel really fortunate to have between, Bobby and Jeff, a really good ear to the ground. And I don't know, maybe everybody feels that way, but I certainly don't take it for granted. Speaking of that, they go back into session, I thought I read next week, where they're going to finish things up. So I don't know if there'll be anything that comes down late from them. So I have not heard anything, but that has to be a little bit unusual or feel for them of getting things wrapped up. It's a good thing they got allowable growth, SSA, approved when they did. There's been some years they don't get it approved until the end of March and early April. And if that had been the case this year, can you imagine right now not knowing what our, budget would look like for next year? So otherwise, any other questions for the group? We'll have our regular June meeting 2 weeks from tonight. Just moving forward. All right. Well, there's no other questions. Feel free to reach out at any time. One of the most frustrating things in our roles here is just how fast things change. And I do apologize if at times, if the board doesn't feel like they're in the loop on certain things, but sometimes getting information out too soon puts us in a bad spot, because just like with the school lunch program, if I send something to you as soon as I get it and then it changes a couple days later, I'd rather wait a few days and see what is actually true or not true and have to retract certain statements. And it's really frustrating when that happens. And that's what we went through the first time around with the lunch program. So as of right now, we're able to feed our kids, all kids, until June 30th. We were given information from our AEA that said it was through the 30th of August. That wasn't in line with what the State Department said. So we got other information saying it was through June 30th. They're also saying they're not taking waivers at this time. However, we know that could change too. And there could be a waiver process that comes into play June 20th. So as of press time, we can only have our, food serving till the end of June, but I'm not ruling out anything's possible. I don't know what to say other than that. And I apologize if it seems like it's all over the place, but I'm just sharing what we're given.
So were families told that they would be fed through the end of summer then? Like, are we keeping people updated, or where are we at with that?
We did not send a mass email out to the district on that. However, there were a few elementary teachers that shared that. And we did send an email out saying just what not verbatim, but at this point, we know it's June 30th, things could change. So. It's tough because I feel like it reflects back on us, but that's not.
With everything else going on,
So you're only as good as the information you're given. But otherwise, thank you, everybody. I don't have anything else. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Well, if it works, I know Jeremy can't be here in 2 weeks, but I'll still have this set up and we'll do our board meeting like this. The hybrid model of school board meetings, we'll go with that. So if that's okay with the board. So, okay, stay safe, stay NAD free. Thanks, everybody.